Hi everyone, Alex Tardy here. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a new weather insight for you from Weather Echo. Atmospheric rivers, precipitation for the West Coast. This is November 5th, and we're going to talk about what could happen in the middle of the month or next week. Let's take a look. Okay, this here is from the Center for Western Weather Water Extremes. And what we're depicting here is the potential for several atmospheric rivers. Now, they've been ongoing over the past few days in the Pacific Northwest, and that continues, spreading in Northern California. There is another system that's going to go by to the north, as shown here as number 2. That'll stretch out and mainly affect British Columbia and the far Pacific Northwest. Now, after that, 3, 4 is unsure how much phasing will occur along latitude lines I have shown here, about 33 north up to about 43 north. So it really covers much of California. Now, keep in mind, this is an older model run before I show you a newer model run. Okay, this is the latest of the European model run today, and a lot more colors, more significant, broader, organized atmospheric river potential. Now, same thing goes for what's currently going on right now, but what you need to focus on is not just the system that goes by to the north, as shown as number 2, that gets stretched out and brushes across Seattle, mainly hits British Columbia latitude. It's the next system, 3, potentially 4, between November 9th and 12th. And a lot of that goes south of the black line as well, so that affects Southern California as well. And then it starts to shift further northward, where you have repeated atmospheric rivers over Northern California. So significant weather pattern potentially organizing taping shape with multiple atmospheric rivers, not just affecting the Pacific Northwest like we've seen lately, but most of the West Coast and California. Okay, when we look across Central California, we see, as shown here, I picked a point, an atmospheric river number 1, that produced the precipitation across Northern California already. Number 2 is just a weak glancing blow. Then number 3 is broad with a large uncertainty, because you see all those lines and dots are spread far apart. So exactly where that's going to land on the California Central Coast is uncertain. Now, when we go to the Pacific Northwest, of course, we have high uncertainty with what's going on now. The number 2 also makes it into the Pacific Northwest, but remember that gets stretched out and moves up into British Columbia mostly in the next couple days. Now, 3 and 4 also should affect the Pacific Northwest as shown here. But even in the Pacific Northwest, there's high uncertainty, okay, starting around the 9th and then rolling through the 14th of November. Okay, individual maps here from the Center for Western Weather Water Extremes, November 8th through 9th. So this is the one that's incoming. This is really number 4 in a recent series, okay? So this is 4 in a recent series. This will be coming in over November 8th and 9th. This will get stretched out, and I'll show you some maps of why. This will mainly affect the far Pacific Northwest, like Seattle and, of course, British Columbia. That one weakens. Now, a new one starts to form, but it forms in pieces over the eastern and northern Pacific, as shown here. So those pieces of atmospheric rivers may potentially come together once we get a more significant cold storm down from Alaska. We'll show some maps on that. So this is between the period 11 through 13. Those are those high uncertainty periods that we just showed with atmospheric river, new atmospheric river 3 and 4. Okay, when we look at the same period, the atmospheric river in 3 and 4, we can still see high uncertainty as shown here. And this is the European and the global model. So one of them is a little more consolidated. That's the European. And on the right, the global forecast system trending to be more consolidated, but not right there at the moment with this forecast. So I've got arrows pointed to the main activity going on. You can see on the left-hand side, 2 main pieces of atmospheric river, 2 main pieces of energy. On the right-hand side, you kind of see that too, but it's not as clear. Okay, now deepening low pressure, okay, this is what's coming in and causes the system to stretch out and move into British Columbia and weaken and fall apart. It also leaves a weather system, as you see here, to the south. You see how it leaves that cutoff low in the eastern Pacific as shown here. Upper ridge is what's going to come in and bring the really warm air mass and warm conditions thanks to the offshore flow as well, shutting off the sea breeze. But overall, our mountains and deserts really warm because of this upper ridge. Now, the weather pattern to the north, and that's where the cold air that sets up for the Santa Ana wind, that just moves across the Great Lakes and into the northeast for a storm there as well. Now, notice on the image to the right, there's a lot of cold air, that deep L in blue, that's up in Alaska. That'll be important for upcoming weather pattern. Okay, for the weekend though, we're going to focus on Santa Ana wind. Weak Santa Ana wind, high pressure at the surface, moving across Oregon into the Great Basin. That creates the offshore flow. Now, because the air mass is really warm, that really beefs up the potential for really warm temperatures over California. If we can get that offshore flow all the way to the coast, like recently, the Santa Ana wind could bring really warm conditions there as well. So this is the pattern for the weekend: offshore, dry Santa Ana wind. Okay, what about the changes next week? Now, this is when it becomes really important. So I mentioned that L up in Alaska, it slowly drops down with more energy. Now, the cutoff low is not really a factor, but it's going to follow a path of that cutoff low and then set up along the eastern part of the Pacific and west coast. So this is a really critical pattern. So if this system comes in this deep and slow, it might be able to consolidate all that atmospheric river moisture, all that available water vapor, and really bring a lot of precipitation up and down the west coast as shown here. Meanwhile, the east coast remains active as well in the northeast because the systems that move through are following a path with the jet stream right up along eastern Canada and New England. Okay, the global forecast system, when you look at all the models together, kind of averaged, take a look what it shows. I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the prior maps, especially with the global forecast system, but look at all the green for week number 2. It has confidence that above normal precipitation across all of the West, as shown in the green, is likely during that period. So right now we're dealing with Pacific Northwest, Northern California being very wet. That's why that shows up in week 1. And then that really fourth system slams British Columbia as shown here. But our focus here is going to be next week. Okay, this will be the potential really starting on November 10th and then rolling all the way through November 14th, potentially into the 15th, but really we're focused on week 2, and this is the first part of week 2. The first part of week 2, which again is roughly that November 10th through 14th period as shown here. All right, hope you enjoyed this insight. There's going to be a lot of weather updates coming up over the next several days, especially for the West Coast and really much of the West, as these atmospheric rivers potentially consolidate. As we get that cold air from Alaska dropping down a deep Pacific storm, that'll be key on really where the heaviest rain goes and where these atmospheric rivers end up organizing, strengthening, and consolidating, and ultimately producing the most precipitation impact. You can follow more information on TikTok, YouTube, and of course real-time updates on X. We did post a blog on the current atmospheric river series that are affecting Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. All right, thanks everyone.